Hello, everybody. This is Kxo Radio once again for our weekly Imperial Valley High School football update with the one, the only Mickey Dale. What you got for us, Mickey?
Well, it was a big weekend in football last weekend as well. So five Valley schools that are going into week 5 this week. So that's always pretty impressive. And Imperial win. I was telling George before we started the game last week. I said, do you remember the week in Yuma in Cibola? It was 100 degrees at kickoff, not 40 degrees off. That's last Friday night in Fallbrook. It was 67. It was glorious, and it was a big victory for the Tigers as they came away with an 8-7 win. Their second consecutive win by identical score, 48. And in that one, freshman Darren West. So again, a monster game now. He's recorded over 100 yards rushing, now 3 games in a row. And last Friday night, 176 yards, scored 3 touchdowns rushing, and then added a 6-yard or 74-yard punt return that went for a touchdown. That was just remarkable watching him not only changing courses on the field, and juking out players from the other team, straight arms, and then get a ton for 74 yards and a touchdown. It just has been remarkable so far playing for the Tigers in the backfield. And quarterback Ayala, solid once again, 154 yards passing. That was his 9th. And it went to Gio Robles. And then we hadn't been able to announce lately because he's had an ACL problem in one of his knees, reverting back to the beginning of last year at West Hills. So we haven't seen it. Gio's a remarkable athlete as well, 6'4" or 6'5" target out there, was able to get a touchdown reception, his first of the season. And Ayala also rushed for 95 yards in the game at quarterback and scored 2 more touchdowns as well. So very solid at the quarterback position. It was nice on defense to see Brandon Felix come up with an interception. He missed the first game due to a non-football injury at the beginning of the season. Comes through, but has been playing very hard the last few weeks and got an interception to help out the defense last week. Also, and we want to mention Bukaba. He had 10 tackles along with JJ's 10 tackles to face the Tigers' defense against Fallbrook in a game that head coach David Shaw told me after the game. He said, we hadn't circled in from last year when the Tigers lost 27-21 in the second round of the playoffs in a game I'm sure he thought we could have won, and I thought we could have won and came up just a few points short. So they had circled that game. They were looking forward to it, and they came away with a 48-7 victory. And also we want to mention senior Isaiah Perez. He came in the ball late in the game when different players were sent into the lineup to take a look at them the coaches wanted to see. Isaiah ran for 51 yards on 5 carries and looked very good, very impressive in those. So I hope that if it comes to a large score and he gets some chances to carry the ball this week, we can see what he can do. He's a senior, so it'll be his final homecoming against Palo Verde this week. Tigers are 4-0, giving them the best Imperial start since the 2013 season when they went 11-0 before their one and only loss in the third round of CIF playoffs that year. Central Spartans had trouble getting some offense against Otay Rank, who came from behind to pick up a 27-20 victory at El Centro. CJ 48-yard interception return for a touchdown, however, and recovered a fumble for the Spartans. Matthew Lizaiola also recovered a fumble, and Joshua Garcia recovered a fumble. That was a recovery that went for a touchdown for Central, and Viesca would score a rushing touchdown, their third touchdown of the game, and rushed for 68 yards in that one. That handed the Spartans their first loss against 3 wins this season, and they'll be facing an Old Desert Valleys League foe in Coachella Valley this week. The Old Desert Valleys League had Indio and Coachella and Brawley and Central and Calexico back in the old days. So it'll be the Arabs and the Spartans at Cal Jones Field on Friday night in the battle of 3-1 teams. Brawley Wild with a big victory, getting us to 30-7 in that one. Their quarterback Matt Gutierrez threw a touchdown pass and scored a pair of touchdowns on the ground as well to face the Wildcats. And Matthew Moreno scored a rushing touchdown. And Sergio Garcia caught the TD pass from Gutierrez for the 2-1 Wildcats. Also, Alec Valdez scored a safety for the Wildcat defense. Always exciting for a defense to get a couple of points up there on the safety. So congratulations to him. There was also a familiar name that was playing for the Saints, last name of Palomalu. You first think of Troy Polamalu, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, went on to the Hall of Fame, and it was his son, Pi, who played in the backfield on offense and the defensive backfield, also returned kickoffs for the Saints. So it was kind of cool to hear that name being broadcast over the PA system. And the Wildcats, I mentioned 2-1, they're actually 3-0 on the season. They'll travel to Yuma, and they'll be taking on Gila Ridge on Friday night. The Kxo Bulldogs remain unbeaten, and they defeated Francis Parker 4-8. Quarterback Bobby Monahano rushed for 83 yards in that game and tossed a touchdown pass to Diego Baez to pace the Kxo Bulldogs. And sophomore Jose Fernandez, he rushed for 92 yards in the game, just missed the 100-yard mark, and scored the game winner on a 2-yard run with less than 5.5 minutes to go to seal it for the Bulldogs. Now they've got a big test this week as they host the Holtville Vikings. Both teams coming in 4-0 on the season. Both teams playing very good football. And that will be an interesting one, Kurt, that we'll be looking for scores with on Friday night while we're broadcasting the Imperial and Palo Verde game. That should be a great game.
Well, it should be. It should be very physical as well.
Yeah, exactly. Holtville has been very tough, especially on defense, and they scored another shutout as they defeated El Cajon Valley 56-0 at Burger Field in Holtville. Enrique Arma scored a pair of touchdowns for the Vikings, rushed for 101 yards on just 5 carries. After Sanchez scored a 6-yard touchdown. Quarterback Alonzo Cuevas hit Raul Briseño on a 52-yard touchdown pass. Now remember the name Briseño because he had the 52-yard touchdown pass. But then Cuevas got injured. Briseño comes in at quarterback and throws a ton on his own. Threw a pair of them, in fact, one of them to Alan Carrillo, and he also scored on a 7-yard run. So he has a 52-yard touchdown reception, a 7-yard run, and a touchdown pass in the game. So great job by Raul Briseño coming in, moving from his wide receiver position back to a familiar quarterback spot that he's played the last few years, going into the varsity level. Landon Gillum rushed for 93 yards for the Vikings. Tito Gray ran for 51 yards on just 3 carries. He scored a touchdown. The Vikings have been a juggernaut this year. Aseo Miranda led the defense, 2 interceptions there. And Fernando Urim recovered a fumble for the Vikings. Vikings defense held the Braves to just 107 yards of offense, only 29 on the ground. Interesting to note, the Kxo Bulldogs get most of their yardage on the ground. So it'll be an interesting game, like Kxo Field, when the Bulldogs host the Vikings on Friday night. That'll be a good one there. And the Calipatria Hornets continue their unbeaten ways. They defeated Tri-City Christian 28-7. At Veterans Field in Calipatria. After 3 away games, the Hornets finally get to go back home. They come up with a big victory in front of the home crowd. Dominic Hawk, a 17-yard run that was just superlative. Watching him zigzagging and threading his way through the defense, breaking tackles to score the 17-yarder. And he now has 10 touchdowns on this season in the quarterback position. Perez scored 2 touchdowns for the Hornets and had an intermittent defense, and Oscar Lopez scored the 4th touchdown for Calipatria. Now they've got a big test this week as the 4-0 Hornets will be at us again, but they're facing Army-Navy. Army-Navy is also unbeaten. They've 3 games, they've all been shutouts. They have outscored their opposition 132-0. So a big test for the Hornets this week as the Warriors of Army-Navy from Carlsbad will become the Veterans Field facing up in the North End. So it'll be an interesting game there. One game will be played early this week. It'll be on Thursday night as the Southwest Eagles will host La Quinta on Thursday. They came up on the show 49-0 score to Vincent Memorial. Both teams playing on their home field as Vincent plays their home games, as you would say, because they don't have a field of their own to have a crowd at. So they played their home games at Southwest, and Southwest is the home team dedicated onto that. But Vincent Memorial comes away with the victory. Patricio Carranza, who is the 3rd quarterback this season to play at quarterback for the Scots, threw for 141 yards, completing 10 of 14 passes for 4 touchdowns and rushed for 2 scores on his own. So they lost 2 quarterbacks due to injury, and then Patricio comes in and has done just a superb job at quarterback for the Scots. And what's cool with that, and I coach always see that, is that 4 different receivers caught touchdown passes. Ricardo Vizcarra, Mateo Ramos, Diego Cisneros, and Victor De Leon had receiving touchdowns in the game. And De Leon also had a rushing touchdown as well. Safety Alvaro Pereira and receptions in that game. Emmanuel Montano added a pair of sacks and had 2 tackles for loss for that defense that threw a shutout up against the Eagles. Actually, on Thursday night of last week. Vincent Memorial will travel to Chula Vista on Friday, and they'll meet the Bonita Vista up there to face the Barons. And again, we mentioned South on Thursday against and they'll be looking first win of the season. That game will be on KX. So the NFL Thursday night game is over. Carol Buckley and John Driffel will be there to join the game in progress at that time. To stay so for the NFL game, and then for the Southwest Eagles and La Quinta game to follow that. So that kind of recaps we had last weekend. But Imperial has a big game coming up on Friday night. We were talking a little bit about that before we came on here, and it's still here in the Imperial Valley, and especially to have homecoming. My brother was in the class of 1984, and their class is having their 40th reunion. So there's going to be some grandstands erected just beyond the north end zone for the class of 84. So it'll be kind of cool to see some of those friends of my brothers that I remember as a few years in school that are going to be coming to that. So that'll be an exciting one there. And they're playing Palo Verde. And there's been some good battles in the past with Palo Verde. Although we don't see Wally Grant on the sideline. He's the head coach that took them to 2 CIF championships. He's been battling cancer, and we hope that we see him later on in the season. But he will not be coaching on Friday night. Assistant coach Scott Richards will be doing the head coaching job while he's in absence right now. And George Grahl and I will be at Mike's side for that one. We'll be live on Kxo Radio Friday night. So if you tune in that for the local, if you're watching from out of town, the YouTube channel will be live, and we'll also be on kxoradio.com as well live. So make sure to tune into that. Hopefully we'll talk to some people from 40 years ago class. Maybe we get one of the athletes that played back then up to interview them at some point during the game. That'll be exciting. As far as the competition between the Tigers and the Yellow Jackets, Imperial has won 10 of the last 11 contests against Palo Verde. The lone loss was during Palo Verde's DIF Division IV championship 2 years ago when they went 13-2. The Jackets won the Division V title, and in 2020 they did not play Imperial that season, as they had moved to the Desert League from the Imperial Valley League at that time. And last year, Imperial claimed a narrow 14-0 game that was played here in Imperial. And we'll have to describe their offense for you. And Kurt, I don't know how many offenses you've seen like this, but their interior line is basically shoulder to shoulder. And then they have wing backs that come flying through. It's kind of like a double wing offensive formation, very tight and very difficult for defenses to read it. So it'll be kind of interesting to see. And for old scutters like me that remember back in when Coachella was in the Desert Valleys, they had Coachella back then. He had what was called a fly offense. And it was very similar to what that fly offense is for folks who remember back at that time. So that's what we had to look from last week and what we had to look forward to this week. That'll be a great weekend for football.
It should. Let me just clarify the Southwest game. KXL Radio will be doing the NFL game on the radio. And while that's going on, they'll be streaming the Southwest game via YouTube. Now, when
good. So it'll be live on YouTube then.
Well, yeah, and when the NFL game is over and the contractual obligations are met, then we'll immediately switch over to the high school game at Southwest.
Okay. So if you're listening on KXO Radio, they'll be joined in progress, but YouTube it will be from the beginning.
Absolutely. And
right.
It's going to be a great week, and I think the Hornets are going to figure out a way to prevail. Army-Navy doesn't like to go to Calipatria.
No, they don't, but that's going to be a real battle. I think that one and the Chico-Hobel games, those are going to be ones that I'm going to be interested in seeing scores on all night long.
Absolutely. So, right. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This has been KXO Radio with Mickey Dale, bringing you your Imperial Valley High School football update.